Over the last decade, Kenya has been seeing a lively debate over the regulation of its ever-expanding religious market and demands for a new churches law. Tales of hypocritical abuse of power and of emerging cults, coupled up with security concerns regarding religious extremism, leading to the proposal to tighten regulatory control over the religious market, which expanded rapidly since the 1990s. Now, despite widespread recognition of the problem, new legislative steps have failed so far. The Religious Organizations Bill of 2024 seeks to review laws governing churches countrywide. The bill proposes hefty fines for religious organizations engaging in quote-unquote unchristian practices. Good evening. Welcome to Christian World Today. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. I'm sitting in for Fred Njiri tonight. We'll be having a conversation around the relations between religious institutions and the state, or in other words, the government of the day. What are some of the lines that should not be crossed, particularly at a time when the calls for regulations of religious institutions have been made? Well, a section of church leaders have voiced their dissent over that particular move, while others agree that that is the way to go. Particularly this comes at a time after we've seen over 400 bodies that have been exhumed from the now famous Shakahola massacre probe. Aside from that, we've also seen practices here and there which are questioning, for lack of a better word. So that is the conversation that we'll be having later on in the broadcast with my guest in studio, that is Bishop Alan Kefa. Christian World kicks off right now. All right, but first, the news. Now, interdenominational prayer service was held in Hillside Endarasha Academy in honor of the victims of the fire tragedy. Nyeri Archdiocese Archbishop Anthony Muheria has called on Kenyans to pray for parents and the entire Endarasha Academy who were hit by the deadly fire tragedy. Archbishop Muheria also called for cooperation with the authorities to consolidate the numbers, even as they mourn the loss of the young ones. He further called on the community to stop pointing fingers against one another. Other leaders have also called on the investigating units to give a detailed report.
Many parents pick their children from Hillside but have not yet informed them, and so there are some unaccounted children, and it's only fair that for the sake of peace of mind, if you picked your child, just call the institution so that you may say your child is at home and he's safe, and also kindly take them for a bit of a checkup and assistance because the trauma is quite huge. Secondly, we'd like to take this opportunity to ask all of us Kenyans, when these things happen, it is very easy to start pointing fingers. Let us rather take this moment to think and put ourselves in the shoes, much as we cannot fully comprehend their pain, but the shoes of those who are suffering.
Mambo kama hayo ichunguzwe na Wakenya wapate ripoti kamili. Kwa nini hayo ilifanyika?
Iangalie kabisa chanzo cha hiyo moto. Unajua watoto kuwa kwa dormitory na moto inatokea nje, hawana la kufanya.
At least 3 students have been injured after a fire broke out at Isiolo Girls High School in Isiolo town on Saturday night. It comes after the deaths of at least 21 children in a different fire incident at a Hillside Endarasha school in Nyeri. A Kenyan police spokesperson said the blaze destroyed dormitories at Isiolo Girls High School before being contained. The cause of the blaze is unknown, but there have been numerous fires in boarding schools in Kenya in recent years, prompting national concern about safety standards. The Kenya Red Cross said 3 children had suffered minor injuries and had received psychological first aid.
That's very wrong. Yes. Lakini tunazuliwa nje sasa ni makosa hiyo.
Kwani ni nini kwa ndani wazazi ili
jana walikuwa wapi walimu sasa wanazuia watu?
Wakae hata kwa nyasi hapo.
Yesterday walikuwa wapi jana?
Mbaya kwa mlango hii. Hii pesa si poa kwa shule. Kwa sababu hii shule ni ya mzazi na mtoto na mwalimu.
Hata mwalimu mmoja apatikani. Hapa.
Kanisa ilikuwa inaongelesha kusaidia hata watoto.
No.
Mtoto kwa basi ya watoto mseme watoto wale wamelala shule ni hawa na wale wamelala nje ni hawa. Jina langu kwa wale wanifahamu ni Lucy Moria kutoka hapa, na nimekuja hapa kwa shule ya Isiolo Girls ambayo mnaona vile tuko hapa kwa gate. Shule ilipatwa na mkasa last night na imekuwa mambo mbaya. Shule imekuwa gutted down, 1 dormitory ya form 1 ambayo ina contain watoto kama 135. As for now ile kitu inasemekana hakuna wale wameumia, but we are still to wait for the official confirmation from the school and police. But nimevisit the scene, kukombaya yote, everything is gutted down, the whole dormitory is down, everything what was inside is down, and unfortunately wazazi wamekuwa hapa. I've been here myself since 6 in the morning. Nilisikia jana usiku from Nairobi and I came, na nimekuta wazazi wanajaa hapa na students panicking. Wengi they are not sure where their girls are, and wamefungiwa nje. It's very unfortunate. Hakuna mtu anawaandress, but I hope something will happen. But so far it's about 10 now, still wazazi wako nje ya gate. They are panicking, they are worried, they want to know where their girls are. Nimeingia kule ndani, nimekuta others in groups, so I don't know. So wazazi wengine wametoka hata as far as Nairobi, Nyahururu wameingia hapa. Those who are not sure, wale hawakuweza kuchukua wazazi wao watoto wao last night. Kwa hivyo tunaomba hiyo investigation, hiyo mipangilio, mwalimu wako naye ndani, polisi wale OCS wapange haraka, kwa sababu hawa sasa wanataka kukonfirmiwa nini inaendelea. Mtu huwezi kusema mtoto alitoroka usiku na yuko sure where they are. So we need to hear a statement from the school.
Now, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has urged political leaders to listen to Kenyans on the ground and respond to their needs and demands. The self-proclaimed truthful man has castigated leaders who have questioned his remarks and decision to quote-unquote stand by the people.
Viongozi sikizeni ground, wanasema ati mimi nawatisha. Na mimi nikuambia tu ukweli, kwa sababu mimi ni mzee na ni kiongozi. Nakuambia hawa, msiposikiza ground, mtakosana na wenye kuandika nyinyi kazi na watamfukuza. Hiyo ni kuambia ukweli ama ni kuwatisha? Bishop mwenyewe amesema hapa, good leadership is listening to the people. Listen to them, because hao ndio unaongoza, na ni muhimu ujue vile wanataka kuongozwa na uwasikize vile wanaona. Na watu si wadawazimu, watu ni watu. And therefore I want to encourage leaders in the country, please listen to the people. Bishop umesema mzuri, mimi nasemanga ukweli, and many people have a problem with me, because for a long time watu wengi wa serikali wamezoea kudanganya wananchi. Sasa watu wengi tuko nao kwa serikali hawajazoea hii maneno ya ukweli, wanazoea maneno ya uongo. Sasa mimi nikiongea ukweli wanasema mimi naongea mbaya. Mimi Mungu anisaidie niendelee kuongea ukweli, kwa sababu ukweli ndio wa kudumu. Tena watu wa Kenya wamerefuka sana.
Now, African Union Commission Chairperson candidate Raila Odinga has promised to unite African countries and bring out the best of resources to enable the continent to do better economically and socially. Raila Odinga, who recently was on a tour with President William Ruto in China for the China-Africa Summit, says Africa has the potential that needs to be tapped. Leaders have declared their support for his candidacy, saying he's the man best fit for the job.
I've got good reasons why I want to go to Africa, and I've actually put them down very well in a brochure, which will be made available to you people. But I believe that Africa is punching below its weight, and that Africa can do better. I have seen, African leaders moving around. You see, like I've just come from FOCAC, China, Africa, where over 40 African heads of state were. But I was saying, why should African leaders go to China? Chinese are the ones who should be coming to Africa. So these are some of the things that we want to reverse. It should not be reversed, Africa, America, not America, Africa. Not India, Africa. Africa, India. Africa, Turkey, and so on and so forth. Africa can punch at its level. And this is what I want to see. And there's so many things that I've already said about Africa, what Africa can do, how Africa has been undermined, how Africa has been exploited, but we don't want to continue to be whining.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has said it is important to nurture national, regional and international peace and ultimately human security. Speaking when he attended the Haiti Concert and Cultural Festival at Uhuru Gardens, he said that anarchy breeds anarchy. Lack of peace, lack of food brings lack of medical care, lack of education, and anarchy was dehumanizing to human beings. He noted that it is important that the world worked together and appealed to other nations to come forward and join Kenya in contributing their troops or provide logistical support so that the women and young people of Haiti can know peace and prosperity.
Kenya and Haiti enjoy cordial relations cemented by the signing of an agreement to establish diplomatic relations between Kenya and Haiti on 21st September 2023. Haiti has a long history of political instability since its independence on 1st January 1804. Currently, the Haiti situation is complex, and the suffering of the Haitian people has attracted collective consciousness. The multinational security support mission in Haiti has garnered worldwide support, which is a testament of the continued shift towards the world as a global village and the importance given to worldwide peace and security. A few days ago, the Secretary of State of the United States, while visiting Haiti, did acknowledge the indispensable role that Kenya is playing in trying to restore stability and peace in Haiti.
Now, to the Christian world, political leaders have been urged to adopt a servanthood leadership style so as to bridge the gap between the common mwananchi and the leaders. Leaders have been urged to lead as servants and not as bosses. This was the message in a church service attended by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and a host of other political leaders.
The feet of the disciples, an act of humility and love that he received from Jesus himself. Peter's example reminds us that true leadership involves serving others. True leadership involves serving others. Sikia, kama umeitwa kwa nafasi ya kuongoza, you are not a boss. Wewe ni mtumishi, wewe ni mtumwa, watumikie na wengine. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Na utawatumikiaje wengine kama huna hata nafasi ya kufanya nini? Kuwasikiza. There is a very big gap between the leaders and the subjects. In that, hawa wakilia, kiongozi hawezi kusikia, maana kuna gap kubwa mno. But how I wish our leaders today can adopt a servanthood leadership style, that they can lead as servants and not bosses, including us men of the cloth. The church today is failing miserably. The church is losing value because we have bosses leading the church than servants leading the church.
I will play an advert for you. Then you be the judge whether this is biblical or not. Watch.
Tangazo, tangazo, tangazo. Hii Friday ya tarehe 30 mwezi wa August tutakuwa na ibada special kabisa hapa Embassy Cinema. Inaanzia saa 5. Kuna misumari ya inchi 3 ambayo tumetumbukiza kwa mafuta, ikae kwa mafuta, ili hii siku ya Friday watu watolewe misumari, kila mtu misumari 7. Nenda nayo. Unaweza ukaenda uongelee kwa mtu na ikae hapo na utangaze mambo fulani ya kwamba hapa mahali waganga na wachawi hawatawahi onekana tena. Unaweza enda nayo na uigongee kwa mlango na nyundo vizuri na utangaze kama vile nimedunga msumari ukaingia ndani ya mlango. Hivyo ndivyo prosperity imeingia ndani ya hii familia, na hatutawahi kuwa kusononeka na kufilisika tena. Unaweza ukaenda uiweke kwenye toolbox yako na ikaange kwenye toolbox ya kwamba neema na rehema za Bwana zikuandame kuanzia sasa na hata milele. Unaweza ukaenda na udungilie mahali kwa class, kwa ukuta, kwa mbao, kwa mabati, na utangaze kuanzia leo msumari ambao umetoka kwa mafuta na nimeidungilia hapa, lazima success itakuwa ni ya lazima. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, nataka tukatae roho za mauti, tukatae kutengenezewa majeneza tukitumia hii misumari. My brother and my sister, hii Friday Embassy Cinema, mambo ya ajabu yanatendeka. Come on, come on, in Jesus' name.
Well, that will also form part of a conversation tonight, because what is in the Religious Organization Bill of 2024 is that religious persons, or at least persons that call themselves religious leaders, will have to register and they'll have to provide certificates and so many other conditions. We'll also take a look at that and whether it fits into that category of what should be biblical or not. Now, to tonight's testimony.
It's very strange, but the mount was calling my name. I felt as if somebody had a rod and they casted it off the top of that mount, and the hook went into my chest. And I get up to the mountain, and I got out of the car, and I ran to this covering, and there was a plaque, and it said the Basilica to the Transfiguration. And I heard a voice, and the voice said, "Come away and pray with me." But I didn't know how to pray. So I emptied myself and closed my eyes, and I saw a vision, and I saw the eastern sky open up, and I saw somebody come out of that eastern sky, and it came down and descended, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes was white as light. Shalom, my name is Greg Hirschberg. I live in Georgia currently, born and raised in New York City. 64 years old. When I was a little boy, I was raised in a very Jewish family. I was raised Orthodox. Walked to my synagogue every Shabbat, went to Hebrew school 2 days a week. It was pretty austere. My mom sat behind the curtain. My dad wasn't too into it, as I could tell, but he loved my mom, and my mom was Orthodox, so he went along with it. I knew I was a Jew, And there's something special about being a Jew. A Jew isn't just a religion, it's a nationality. When I'd be hanging around friends and somebody say, I'm Puerto Rican or I'm Italian, I'd always say I'm Jewish. But then I got to a point, there was so much anti-Semitism in the Bronx that I didn't want to be Jewish anymore. I'm not so sure I was ever tied into Judaism, to be honest with you. So I got pulled into some Eastern cults. I got very involved in martial arts. Martial arts sometimes is just not a sport, it's a religion. And I had somewhat of a cult leader, and he started to teaching us about the Kundalini energy and sun postures and meditations, and I was kind of into it, but it was a little confusing. Well, lo and behold, I married this swimsuit model, and we were thinking about where to go on our vacation, our honeymoon. And this cult leader, if you will, and I don't know what else to call him because it was a cult, he said, you need to go to Israel. And he was so influential in my life, such a powerful influence that I thought, Israel? I'm thinking Jamaica. I'm thinking on the beach. To be honest with you, I'm thinking about partying and getting high and just laying out. I'm not thinking Israel. I had no desire to go to Israel, but there was such a pull on my life. This is hard for you to believe, but the next day I was on the train going to work, going to Manhattan, and I sat next to somebody who I never saw before, and they said, have you ever thought about going to Israel? So I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm no bowling ball either. So I decided maybe I should go to Israel. But I was so convinced that I was going to have a lousy time in Israel that I put a week of the Greek Isles on the back end of the trip. We go to Israel, my wife and I at the time, right? Get married, go to Israel, leave New York City on an El Al flight, get into Ben Gurion Airport, and we immediately take a flight to Eilat. I was scuba diving in the Red Sea. We were water skiing on top of the Red Sea. We were going out to restaurants, partying, dancing, having a great time. Then we came to Jerusalem about 5 days later. There's an Armenian corner and a Christian corner and a Muslim corner, and it was shocking to me. And I didn't really enjoy it, but we went out to some great restaurants. We just saw some sights on our own. We're having a pretty good time, but I'm thinking, I gotta get to Greece. Well, we had 1 day left. 1 day left to the trip. And I said to my wife, let's get a car and let's go up north. And so she said, why? I said, I don't know. She goes, no. She goes, where do you want to go? I said, I remember hearing something about a place called Tabor, a mount where something pretty special happened. Let's just go there. So we drove up and we didn't know where we were going. So there were hitchhikers. It was 1989. So a guy was hitchhiking. And so I took him where he was hitchhiking, and I look over to the left and I see this mount. And it's very strange, but the mount was calling my name. And I felt as if somebody had a rod and they casted it off the top of that mount, and the hook went into my chest. And as I'm driving up, I got a little exasperated. So in reality, we're looking for this transfiguration mount because something happened there, right? And I get up to the mountain and I got out of the car and I ran to this covering, and there was a plaque and it said the Basilica to the Transfiguration. And I heard a voice, and the voice said, come away and pray with me. But I didn't know how to pray. So I emptied myself and closed my eyes, and I saw a vision. And I know that sounds weird, but people all over the Bible saw visions. And I went to a trance-like state. And I know that sounds new age, but Balaam went into a trance-like state in the Bible, and others have. And I saw the eastern sky open up. And I saw somebody come out of that eastern sky. And it came down and descended. And his face shone like the sun, and his clothes was white as light. And he pressed himself up against me. And the first thing he said is, I love you. And I remember crying for a really long time. My wife says maybe it was about 20 minutes. And I looked back, and it wasn't tears of joy, and it wasn't tears of pain. It was like a sanctification. It was like a cleansing. Like all the crap, all the Eastern thought, all the nonsense, all the religion just came out of me. I didn't know anything about the Holy Spirit. I didn't know that God can enter your heart and live in your tabernacle. So I thought God was on the mountain. And I remember talking to God and saying, I'm so sorry that I have to leave. I don't want to leave. But I hope one day I can come back here. 2 kids from the Bronx, punk kids from the Bronx, go to Israel on their honeymoon to party. And we come back born again, saved, knowing Yeshua as our Messiah. And I got to tell you, I was shocked because I was taught as a young man that Jesus had nothing to do with us. I thought he was the head of the Catholic Church, and Moses, if you will, is the head of the Jewish synagogue. But then I turned over this New Testament expecting to see something really Christian, something hardcore Gentile, and said, this is the genealogy of Yeshua the Messiah, the son of Abraham. I'm like, what? I'm in shock. The son of David. I'm in shock. I'm reading this genealogy and it's purely a Jewish genealogy. I get into other parts of the gospel and I see he's circumcised on the 8th day like me. His mother goes through purification rites, Tohar, like my mom. He has a Pinyan Haben and dedicated, like I was. Man, I can't believe it. So to this day, when they say to me, you know, Rabbi Greg, Jesus was Jewish, I'm like, what's with the past tense? It doesn't matter, but that's a fact. And the crazy thing is, I was secular, right? How did Jesus, the head of the church, bring me back to my Judaism? So if you believe in Yeshua, you don't become less Jewish, you kind of become more Jewish. Jesus never gave up being Jewish. He's born a Jew, he was raised a Jew, he was Torah observant, he died a Jew, he was buried a Jew, he rose a Jew, he ascended a Jew, and he's coming back as a Jew. I never look back. I'm so thankful for what God has done for me. I feel so free. I feel so alive more than I've ever felt. And you get to a place, man, when you meet Yeshua, where he becomes enough. And I'm here to tell you, if God isn't enough, nothing will be enough. You'll search and search and search the world over. You'll go from one high to the next. You'll go from one thing to the next. But when you meet him, all bets are off. It's done. The search is over.
All right, so with that testimony, we'll take a quick breather, but when we come back, we'll be getting into the conversation, and that is around the relations between what we call the first estate, which is the church or religious institutions or the clergy, and the state or the government. How do they correlate, especially at times when there have been calls for the registration of religious institutions or religious persons, as well as at what point do we say now that this point the government should not go beyond in terms of interfering with what happens in the day-to-day businesses of the church, if at all that is possible. So that conversation returns in just a bit. Stay with us, keep your feedback coming in. When we come back, we'll be taking them as we go ahead.